this is not going to be a popular video to make, especially here in Atlanta, but it's something I feel like is important that you should know about. Condos. Condos right now in Atlanta are sitting on the market for 4 months or longer with 0 offers. And here's what makes this even worse. Even when you do find a buyer, there's a real chance that the lender will reject the building entirely because of new federal financing rules. So when you add in HOA fees that can run anywhere from $400 to $700 a month, strict rental restrictions that prevent you from leasing your unit, and the possibility of special assessments hitting you for $20,000 or more, you end up with a property that you can't sell, you can't rent, and you can barely afford to keep. Today, I'm breaking down exactly why the condo market in Atlanta has become such a disaster for a lot of home buyers, and why you should try to avoid them at all costs. From resale nightmares to rental restrictions to skyrocketing fees, I'm going to show you what's really happening with the condos right now, and if you absolutely have to buy one, I'll tell you what red flags to watch out for at the end. So here's what's happening in Atlanta right now. Condos are simply not selling. I'm talking about properties that are sitting on the market for 90 days, 120 days, sometimes 6 months or longer with no activity. Midtown, Buckhead, Sandy Springs, Brookhaven, it doesn't matter where the building is, condos are struggling. And when they do finally sell, they're often going for less than what someone paid for just a couple of years ago. So why is this happening? Well, it's a combination of things. One, new really strict federal lending restrictions after the Surfside condo collapse in Florida in 2021, if you remember that. There are rising HOA fees and strict rental limitations, and also just special assessments that are absolutely draining owners financially. Condos have gone from being an affordable entry point into home ownership to being one of the riskiest investments you can make here in Atlanta. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly why you should avoid buying a condo and what you need to know if you're already stuck in one. Let's start with the biggest issue, resale value. Condos in Atlanta are sitting on the market with almost no buyer activity. I'm seeing listings in the most prime locations like Midtown high-rises, new buildings in Buckhead, and even communities near Piedmont Park that have been listed for months with 0 offers. And as of this video, there are over 300 condo listings in Midtown Atlanta alone. Why, you ask? A few reasons. First, buyers know about the financing issues, which I'll get to in just a second. Second, they're worried about the rising HOA fees and the potential for special assessments. And third, they're comparing condos to townhomes to single-family homes, and in most cases, those other options are just more attractive and financially safe. So even if your condo is in great shape, even if you've maintained it well and updated the interior, you could still struggle to find a buyer. And here's the kicker. While your condo sits on the market, you're still paying your mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and those monthly HOA fees. And I don't have to tell you this if you own one, that's hundreds, sometimes over $1,000 going out the door every month while you wait for a buyer that may never come. You compare that to a single-family home in Atlanta, which are selling relatively quickly, and you can see why condos have become such a bad investment. Now, I know what you might be thinking. If I can't sell it, maybe I can just rent it and at least cover my mortgage for a few months. But here's something a lot of people don't realize. More buildings than not do not allow rentals in a lot of these buildings in Atlanta. And even if they do, they have what's called a cap. So only a certain percentage of the units can be rented. And I will tell you just from my experience, a lot of those leasing permits were already capped even before that building was built, and those went to an investor. So even if you can rent in some of these buildings, they'll tell you, oh, I'll just put you on a wait list. Well, that wait list, waiting for that leasing permit, can last years if you ever get one. And I will tell you, that's not even the norm. The norm is these buildings do not allow rentals. And I've seen some buildings that outright prohibit rentals for the first year or two of ownership, or they limit how often you can rent it in any given time frame. So even if you need to move for work or you're struggling financially and you need to rent out your condo to cover cost, you may not even be allowed to do it, and there are no exceptions. And here's what happens when too many units in a building are rented. Lenders start to reject the building for conventional financing, so those rental restrictions aren't just hurting you, they're also protecting the building's ability to qualify for financing. But that doesn't help you when you're stuck with a property that you can't sell and you can't rent. Now let's talk about financing, because this is always a really big surprise to a lot of people. And this is a huge reason why condos aren't selling. After the Surfside condo collapse in Florida in 21, the federal government and major lenders completely overhauled the rules for condo financing. Now, for a building to qualify for conventional financing, it has to meet very strict criteria. The condo association has to have adequate reserves, typically at least 10% of the annual budget, set aside for repairs and maintenance. The building can't have too many investor-owned units or too many delinquent HOA payments. There can't be any ongoing litigation, major structural issues, or deferred maintenance. And the building has to be warrantable, meaning it has to meet Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines. Here's the problem. A lot of condo buildings in Atlanta don't meet these standards. Maybe the reserves are too low because the HOA hasn't been saving properly. Maybe there's a lawsuit over water damage or construction defects. Maybe too many owners are behind on their HOA fees. Whatever the reason, if a building doesn't qualify for conventional financing, your pool of potential buyers shrinks dramatically. And I know about one community over in Buckhead that some of the sellers are stuck because some of the owners decided to enclose their balcony to make a sunroom. And some of those balconies have now collapsed because they were never made to support that type of weight. And now they can't get traditional financing over there. And the only way around this is if buyers either have cash or they have to use some sort of portfolio loan with a much higher interest rate. And if they're paying higher interest rates, they're going to offer you a lot less money for your home. So even if you find a buyer who wants the condo, there's a good chance that the lender will reject the building and the deal falls through. I see this all the time when it comes to the condos. And this is happening all over Atlanta right now. And it's one of the main reasons condos are sitting on the market. Trying to find a buyer that's either going to pay cash or some other special loan product is extremely difficult to find if you find them at all. Now, let's talk about HOA fees, because this is one of the biggest ongoing costs that people underestimate. When you buy a condo, you're paying a monthly HOA fee that covers things like exterior maintenance, landscaping, insurance for the building, amenities like pools, clubhouses, and the HOA reserves. In Atlanta, those fees can range anywhere from $300 a month to $700 a month, and there are some buildings in Buckhead that I've seen them go for $1,000 or more, depending on the building and what's included. And here's the thing, these fees almost always go up over time. I'm seeing buildings in Midtown where HOA fees have jumped from $400 to $600 in just a few years. I'm seeing newer developments in Buckhead where the fees started at $350 and now they're well over $500. Why? Well, here are a few reasons. First, insurance costs for these buildings have skyrocketed, especially after the condo collapse in Florida, and insurance companies are charging condo associations way more for coverage, and those costs unfortunately get passed directly to the homeowners. Second, if the building needs major repairs and there's not enough in the reserves, the HOA has to raise fees to cover those costs. And third, if the owners in the building are delinquent on the HOA payments, the remaining owners have to make up the difference. So you could be doing everything right, paying your fees on time, and still see your costs go up because of factors completely outside of your control. And here's the worst part. There's no cap on how much your HOA fees can increase. The board simply votes to raise them however much they want, and you have almost no say-so in it. So what starts out as manageable at $350 a month, you could easily see balloons up to $600 or $700 within a few years. Now, if rising HOA fees weren't bad enough, let's talk about the special assessment. A special assessment is an extra fee that the HOA can charge you if there's a major expense that the reserves can't cover. Maybe the roof needs to be replaced, maybe the elevators are failing and need to be upgraded. Maybe there's even water damage or structural issues that require extensive repairs. If the reserves don't have enough money to cover this stuff, the HOA can pass what's called a special assessment, and every unit owner has to pay their share. I've heard of condo owners in Atlanta being hit with special assessments of $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 or more. And you usually have two options to pay. Either pay it in a lump sum, or sometimes they'll give you the option to finance it over several years with payments being added on top of your HOA fee. Either way, it's a massive financial hit that most people just frankly are not prepared for. And here's the thing, you have almost no warning when these things happen. The HOA board votes on it and suddenly you're on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars. If you can't afford it, you can face a lien on your property. And if you try to sell, that special assessment gets deducted from your overall proceeds at closing, which means you're walking away with even less money. But either way, the HOA, I promise you, is going to get their money. And let's talk about the rules and restrictions, because this is another major downside. When you own a condo, you're not just dealing with your own property, you're dealing with an HOA board that has authority over what you can and what you cannot do. You want to renovate your kitchen? You're probably going to need HOA approval. Or if you just want to install a new floor, don't be surprised if you have to submit plans and get it approved first. Or if you just want to paint your front door a different color, not going to happen. And if you want to have a pet, some buildings have strict pet policies. No dogs over a certain weight, no certain breeds, and sometimes no pets at all. And as we've already discussed, if you want to rent out your unit, good luck. Most buildings have rental restrictions that make it nearly impossible to do it. You're essentially giving up control over your own property, and for a lot of people, it's just a deal breaker. And finally, let's talk about noise and privacy. When you share walls and floors and ceilings with other units, you're going to hear your neighbors. I've known people that have bought condos in these buildings and they still complain about the footsteps or the children running across from the unit above, conversations through the walls, or music and TV sounds at all hours. And it's not just noise inside the unit. If you have a balcony, you're likely sharing the outdoor space with your neighbors right next to you. And if you've ever toured one of these buildings, you understand what I'm talking about. So if you want to sit outside and enjoy your morning coffee or have a private conversation, your neighbor is going to hear everything and you're going to hear theirs. For some people, it's tolerable. But for others, especially if you're used to the privacy of a single family home or even a townhome, this can feel absolutely suffocating. All right, so here's the reality. I think you should avoid buying a condo. The resale market just isn't good. You can't rent them out because of HOA restrictions, and financing is an absolute nightmare right now. And fees, honestly, I just think are out of control, and the special assessments are just too big of a risk. But listen, I understand that for some people, a condo is the right choice. Maybe it's all that you can afford, or maybe you just want to live in a specific building or a certain area of town, and condos are the only inventory that makes sense for you. If you absolutely have to buy a condo, here's what you need to look out for to protect yourself. First, make sure the building is warrantable and it meets conventional financing standards, and your mortgage lender can help you confirm all of this. Ask for a copy of the master insurance policy, a reserve study, and the HOA budget. The HOA will provide these documents to you. Have your lender review them before you make an offer. Second, check the HOA's financial health. Are the reserves at least 10% of the annual budget? Or are there any pending or planned special assessments? You can find this out by requesting what's called the HOA board meeting minutes. This basically gives you an outline of discussions that were talked about in the HOA board meetings, and you can look this up for 3 months or 6 months back, sometimes years, if you really want to dig deep into it. And here's the other thing. Are a lot of owners delinquent on their fees is something that you want to look into. And if the answer to these questions are yes, and the financials look shaky, you have to walk away. Third, review the rental restrictions very carefully, no matter what anyone tells you. If there is any chance you might want to rent out your unit in the future, make sure you fully understand the rules around it. Fourth, ask about recent or upcoming major repairs. If the roof, the HVAC system, or elevators or other major systems are nearing the end of their lifespan, a special assessment might be coming. And fifth, talk to current residents if you can. Ask them about the noise, the management responsiveness, and whether they're happy living there. If you hear a lot of complaints, obviously it's going to be a red flag. And hey, if you found this video helpful, hit that subscribe button. It helps me help you. And drop a comment below if you have ever dealt with a condo nightmare in Atlanta. I would love to hear your story. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.